So, guys, today, we'll be talking about cyber resilience and one of our cyber resilience partner, Commvault. David from Commvault is here to talk to us about how Commvault is providing the solutions to our customers around overall cyber resiliency use case. So, David, let's begin.
All right.
So, first question to you is, talk to me about the latest trends you are seeing in customers around how they are talking and thinking about cyber resilience.
No, it's a good question, Boomchi, and thanks for having me and Commvault in the amazing room we have here. But I think that there's a bunch of trends that we're seeing. I think the one that you and I are both excited about is that the market appreciates that prevention isn't the answer.
Yeah.
It's about resiliency and having a strategy to get it back. Because there was a lot of evangelization for a very long time where that wasn't the case. We had to convince security teams that their role extended into IT, and that IT started to have to think about security specific risks. So I think prevention not being the answer, but resilience as part of the strategy is a trend that we've been fighting for together for a very long time. And I think it's really starting to take hold. The other piece I think important to mention is the whole identity resilience aspect of what we're doing right now. Because it used to be worried about people breaking into an organization, but the reality is they're logging in.
Yeah.
And so looking at identity and identity resilience as the new perimeter that not only we need to lock down, but we need to treat exactly as it is, that last perimeter that people are getting into professionally. So having strategy there where we can not only detect the changes that are happening, but be able to test recovery and show how we can bring identity systems back. Because in a lot of organizations, the telephones don't even ring if Active Directory doesn't come out. Yeah. And if we don't have a strategy, the customer's really at a pretty significant disadvantage.
Yeah, no, I agree. Identity is one of the strongest pillar of cyber resilience, right? I always talk to the customer about, hey, you might have your data ready to recover, but that data is like a headless chicken.
Yes.
If you don't have your identity spelled out properly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we are seeing the similar trends around, it's not just the backup anymore,
Oh, no.
right? It's way more than backup, right? People are thinking more from how do I recover my, minimum viable hospital, or minimum viable, bank, right? So people are thinking from that perspective as well. So you're right. I mean, identity is, for me, it's one of the basics of how customers should be looking.
Well, let me give you a really scary statistic. Other than replication, which is where all Active Directory starts, only 3% of the market has a cyber solution around identity. And so almost as a public service, it behooves Trace3 and Commvault to take the message out because, again, it can take an organization weeks to get that one critical service back. This before they start recovering the workloads that make them relevant to their customers to get back to that minimum viable hospital.
Yeah, and in all our identity assessments, which my team is doing, right? Because we have a specific team who is responsible for identity and access management. And my team makes sure that governance and resilience is a pillar to do any assessments. Right? And moreover, non-human identities are taking a...
What is it? Is it 8 bots to one person now or something like that?
Exactly.
It's crazy that how much, and AI only makes that more profound.
Right. And as they say, they don't break in, they log in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, talk to us about some of the recent wins you guys got, the joint customers, and what do you see and where do you see we are excited about 2026?
There's a lot of change, exciting change, right? We are in the middle of an amazing IT renaissance, not just with AI, but how customers and how different businesses deliver outcomes to their users. So it's a very exciting time. And I think what I'm most excited about in 2026 is now that we're seeing companies embrace not just one cloud, but many clouds, and an on-prem infrastructure hasn't gone anywhere. And now we see more and more SaaS applications. It's how we can come together to help them look at their entire data estate from one operational perspective, from one operational for recovery process. Because if we can rationalize, I know it's a magical word, if we can rationalize all those different uh, frameworks into one operational recovery, it just makes everything more smoothly. Well, but back to your question, I know we recently kind of went together. It was, we'll say it's a healthcare company, and they have a very significant AWS presence. And what happened was they were okay with native tools. They weren't excited about it, but they were okay with it. But when they started having federal regulations come in and being very specific and what had to happen, they realized that they had to start embracing things like GovCloud, and FedRAMP certification was critical for those workloads. And there wasn't any other solution that could do what they needed to do other than Commvault. And Trace3 brought Commvault to the table. And with a very successful SaaS POC, we started protecting that workload. And it is really just dipping the toe into what we're now able to do with the customer moving forward. So I know we had a relatively light win to do the proof case, but the opportunity moving forward is absolutely tremendous. And it's not just about an AWS. It's across all the other clouds and their data center footprint when they're ready to make this move. So I think that's a trend that we're going to see. And I think 2026, we're going to see much, much more on.
Yeah, I remember being involved in that win, right? And the amount of workloads which you guys were able to support was one of the key factor for that customer. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, well, back to, customers don't want to have 16 different tools, and one can do it very well. And it's a fantastic example of how it can all come to that.
Yeah, and where do you see Trace3 fits in these kind of solutions?
Oh, what? I mean, that's obvious, right? No matter how good of a hammer Commvault makes, it's the carpenter's hand that wields it that really makes it all come together. So I think Commvault makes amazing tools, and we strive to make them easy to consume, easy to deploy. But it's the consulting services, it's the insight, it's the follow through, it's all the details that Commvault doesn't do that Trace3 brings to the table and gives that full picture. That's really where it all comes together. So while I'm very proud of what Commvault does, it really takes the expertise and the maturity that Trace3 brings to really make the solution do what I think everybody wants it to do at the end of the day.
Right. One of the mantra and motto of my team is that what we call eat your own pill, right?
Wow.
We want to deliver what we said, right? And we've been very successful doing this kind of approach with customer, not just taking the problem from the tools perspective, but holistically.
Absolutely. Well, and resilience is hard. This is
Yeah,
not
it
an
is.
easy problem. And we're not talking about avoiding the hurricane, right? We're talking about an actual criminal
Right.
coming in. And so the problem's going to continue to evolve. It's almost impossible, except for the largest of organizations, to staff that kind of skill set, and being able to come to Trace3 and essentially get that maturity by a phone call it's game changing. And frankly, it's required to do the job well and consistently evolve as the problem evolves.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
That was so brilliant. Thank you.
My next question is that in your recent discussions, right, with customers, and you guys talk to a lot of C-level executives like we do, right? What are the key decision-making points you see from customers' perspective, right? What are the key drivers?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem we're seeing from customers, especially when we start talking to have board level conversations, it's where to begin.
Yeah.
I think they understand that the problem has changed and that the solutions they have in place were designed to solve a different problem, right? So there's no one to blame here, but the reality of cybercrime means that our customers, our prospects have to take a hard look inward and trying to decide where they start evolving their existing solutions into something that's going to tackle this real problem. And you mentioned it before, that minimum viable hospital or minimum viable company. What do we need back? If something were to go really bad, what do we need back to be relevant to our customers or to protect that data that our customers have entrusted to us? And, it sounds like such an easy question to answer, but it's not, because you can talk about it from the sales perspective, but the dependencies are overwhelming.
Yeah.
And the only time that I found customers really get a grip on the complexity of restoring just an individual application is when they test.
Yeah.
And I know that's another area where Trace3 really brings the expertise to make a difference is no matter how good your tools are, until we test, until we actually go into a restore, not on tabletop, but we actually go into a restore, do we truly understand what it's going to take to get back if something really, really bad happens? Because frankly, we have to imagine it's a functional when, not if. Somebody pays enough dollars on the dark web to log into our environment and do the things that they do.
Right. Testing, and testing.
You can't do it. There was a time, remember, when people tested twice, maybe even 4 times a year, and all went by the wayside. I think it's up to Trace3 and Commvault to bring that back, because it's going to make the difference between, keeping customers and losing customers because your competitor is only a click away.
Yeah, and one of the things which we have been very successful is doing what we call a data resiliency recovery assessment, right? Wherein we take the approach of, hey, what's your minimum viable campaign? You're not talking about disaster recovery here. You're talking about a cyber event, right? You need to bring your crown jewels within crown jewels first. So yeah, and absolutely, those are some decision-making points which we are, if customer is not talking about it, we are driving customers to talk about it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an uncomfortable conversation, but
It is.
You guys are
It is. Sometimes it is. It is very uncomfortable because kind of exposes.
Right. Nobody wants to have it.
No one wants to have it until they need it.
Until they need it, and then it's usually too late, unfortunately.
Right. Well, I'll switch gears.
Please.
So there is no talk without talking AI.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Right? You heard it 10 times today.
At least.
At least 10 times. So where do you see Commvault is driving some measurable value for cloud business from AI perspective?
Absolutely. Well, so there's a lot of ways to look at AI when it comes to cyber resiliency. I think the most obvious place that I have to start with is that we can find threats faster and we can identify clean points of recovery faster, leveraging AI tools. It's just a game changer. It doesn't necessarily rely on virus definitions like we used to. AI can dynamically find those threats and allow us to help our customers make smarter decisions in really bad times. The other thing we're finding is that AI is a fantastic coach.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants to be the backup guy. So having AI being able to take a human-asked question using native language, how can I protect the SQL database, or what workloads aren't protected the way I think they should be, and have our AI co-pilot Arlie respond in a way that's easy to understand. Meanwhile, giving directions on how to potentially correct things or getting links to further investigation. The co-pilot aspect of AI in the tool, I think the resilience industry especially was ready for it because it's such a complicated pod.
Yeah.
And then I think the third piece is just customers want to help themselves. And because Arlie can open tickets for our customers that also make suggestions on if they see an issue, how to correct it. It's not limited to what the particular human being that picked up the phone knows. So we can look at our documentation. It can look at the work groups and the user groups. So we can farm responses from a lot of different places instantly. And we're finding internally that the deflection rate, right? How many questions actually support tickets actually make it to a human being at Commvault is down by 80%. And our customers are ecstatic. The tool works. They want to talk to somebody. He's smart. And Arlie is the ultimate qualifier in terms of helping them, fix the problem and get back to the real job as quickly as possible. So when it comes to using AI within our tool, even early days, we're talking about technologies that are less than 2 years old. The impact they're having in our solution and with our customers has been so dramatic.
Well, we are seeing those similar trends, right? Finding the clean recovery point is one thing, right? How soon you can find is another.
That's well said.
Right? And then, another thing which we are seeing a lot is the integration between different SIMs or an XOR kind of tools with likes of Commvault, because the security queues are getting alert fatigue, right? So how do we do that kind of integration is another place where we are seeing a lot of adoption. And then, as you said, customers are demanding more and more intelligence from these tools that, hey, last 2 years, I'm taking backup of certain databases from last 2 years. Can you kind of create me a complete playbook so that in case I hit by ransomware,
Right.
kind of scenario, right? How soon I can make those decisions.
No, that I
That
love the
decision tree matrix.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up too, because we announced an MCP server inside of Commvault.
Right.
Had our shift event a few weeks ago or months ago, rather. And that allows external AIs to talk to our AI to get context. So it's such a new motion, but to your point, this is my application. How do I get it back? Well, that's not just a Commvault question. Where's my infrastructure and what's all the connectivity and where is my security stance and all of this? Well, Commvault's never going to know that. But if we can make it easier for the orchestration AI to have us participate in that solution, it just opens up a whole new set of possibilities for our customers to do some really cool things without product-specific knowledge. So I think we're really on the cusp of something really interesting happening there.
Yeah, excellent. Well, my last question to you is around conversions, right? That we are seeing ton of conversion, and by conversion I mean that customers are asking to do more with less,
Yes.
right? Do more with the tools they have. So, how Commvault is kind of addressing those trends?
Thank you. Yeah. And convergence, you and I talked that before we sat down today. I was like, yeah, so what does convergent mean to you? Because so many different directions. I think at the top of it is just environmental convergence. We talked about SaaS apps and being up in the cloud with native apps or in the data center. They don't want 14 different tools. They don't want a different identity resilience tool. They want one operational recovery mechanism. So in terms of an environmental rationalization that's going on right now, internal convergence rather. And next, from a workload perspective, you see applications going into the cloud, out of the cloud. AI is a great example. Sometimes we build the AI in the cloud, and then when we put our precious data in there, we bring it back into the data center or vice versa, right? So that portability in terms of managing all the different workloads wherever they live or wherever they move is super important, right? And so that's a place where Commvault can even assist customers moving workloads from on-prem, say, a VMware machine and translating into an Azure workload if that's the mechanism they want to use to get there. So we're helping customers who are going through that application convergence. And one other thing we're seeing is our customers aren't just all in America. They're not just all in Canada, they're all over the world. And so just recently, Commvault announced GeoShield. And essentially what that does is it allows customers to come to us and talk about sovereignty. So how can you have one operational control managing all your workloads wherever they live, anywhere in the country, that then starts adhering to these new regulations we're seeing all over the world. And some of them are profoundly stringent, and there's no way to achieve them even with the hyperscalers because they're so well defined. And so with GeoShield, we're helping global customers continue to adopt Commvault as a global platform, but give a nod to the regulations that are coming aggressively towards them that it's going to be very hard for them to say no to within the next year or so. So that's just 3 examples. I'm sure you could rattle off 3 more, but those are 3 I think that jump out that Commvault and Trace bring to the table very quickly for our customers.
Yeah, and one of the trend which we are seeing from convergence perspective is from the data security point of view as well, right? That we are seeing a lot of DSPM use cases binding with cyber resilience use cases, right? Because we talk to a lot of customers and they really want to, go with data security solutions. But guess what? There are a lot of customers who are still heavy on-prem, right? And for them, knowing your data, knowing the security posture of your data is difficult, right? And I believe you guys acquired a company,
Well, if you're going to set me up like this, I'll stay here all night. But yeah, Commvault recently acquired a company called Satori, and that's exactly what it does.
Yeah.
It helps us identify not only unstructured data, but structured data and data throughout the landscape, and prioritize it and help customers understand what they have, what kind of needs they might have, but probably more importantly, what changes are occurring in real time, so that if we see behaviors that don't align with corporate policy or may actually represent a risk, we can stop them very quickly. Because it's not just about how things are set up today, but as we all know, and we've already mentioned it a few times, things change so fast right now. You can't do it manually. It's just an impossible task. So leveraging the tools like Satori to help make empirical decisions about what are we doing and how it's affecting our risk stance, our risk posture, is so critical to success in.
Yeah, and we feel that, knowing your data is another very important pillar of cyber resilience. Some people might argue with that, comment, but what I feel is that if you are hit by a cyber event, it just doesn't end at the recovery. What kind of exfiltration you might be facing, right?
Right.
So knowing your data is absolutely important, right? And I believe that's where, another integration which we are seeing in the industry now. How do I integrate my, the resilience data protection systems with DSPN tools, right? To know more about my data. And what better than your backup silo to have one single source of information for all that, rather than touching all your sources, especially if you are a heavy on-prem stuff. Because it's an easy button for cloud, but it's not that easy for a heavy on-prem customer who has thousands of
applications and operating systems on our does.
Exactly. So that's another piece which we are seeing. There's a lot of trends around those integrations.
No, I love it. The more we understand the problem when it happens, and again, that all starts with knowing your data, how critical it is, and what else it's dependent upon, that's really lays the stones of the path to recovery. So I love your focus on that. It makes a huge difference. But I also understand the customer's reticence to look into it because it's super hard to do. And it's not, and a lot of times you don't even understand where all your data state is. So the fact that Trace3 is leaning into it and helping their customers through, again, asking those hard questions, the outcomes are so much better.
Yeah. Well, David, it was an excellent talking to you.
Hey, Boomchi, this is
And
awesome.
always a pleasure meeting you. And yeah, I like where Commvault is going, right? I like the vision, and I'm sure we'll do more with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm super excited always to partner with Trace. We do great things together.
Perfect. Thank you.
So thank you, Boomchi.